Delta and Uber launch a new partnership, Bilt adds a new redemption option, and American Express announces pretty strong earnings. This and more in today's roundup. Big favor before we dive in is to hit the like button to help out the algorithm. If you know someone that might benefit, then share this with them. I also did kind of lose my voice given things we've been going to, so apologies in advance. Starting with Delta, we now have details for their new partnership. Before they were with Lyft and now they're with Uber. This change was first announced back in January, but we didn't really have details yet. We'll look at the numbers, but it's pretty solid. The entire idea is that you're earning extra Delta Sky miles, whether for Uber rides or deliveries. The multipliers do vary depending on what you're doing. For example, you're getting 3x Delta Sky miles for Uber reserved rides. We actually end up using this quite a bit. So the main draw is that you're going to make reservations for a specific time, that way they have a car there. We don't really bother during normal times because it's not necessary, but if we are doing, let's say, an early morning flight, let's say 5 a.m. or 5:30, and we need an Uber at, let's say, 3:45, then this is super useful, and you're kind of de-risking missing your flight. You also get 2x Delta for premium rides, then Comfort, XL, or Black. For example, if we're flying out to ski, then we're going to call an XL because we pretty much need that. If we have friends visiting and we're in the city, we'll also call an XL. You also get 1x Delta for Uber X to and from the airport. If it's a shorter flight and we're only doing carry-ons, then that's what we'll do. You also get 1x Delta for Uber Eats, so restaurant and grocery deliveries of $40 or more. Note that all of this is specific to Uber in the US and not international. One big question is whether this is better or worse than the prior Lyft one. So for that program, you're getting 2x miles for Lyft rides to and from the airport and 1x on all US Lyft rides. I'd argue that that one was a bit better since standard rides were counted as well. At the same time, and it might just be us, I find that we don't really use Lyft as much compared to Uber now. We'll still use it if the prices are insane for Uber, but it's not our first choice. I think for us, the priority is Uber, Waymo, and then Lyft. I would put Waymo higher if it wasn't a 2x premium for price and if the wait wasn't as long. Okay, back to Uber. Along with Delta, you do have another option. So Marriott and Uber also have a partnership. You can have both programs attached to your account, but you can only allocate points to one of them. For that one, you can earn 3x on premium rides and 2x on Uber X reserved rides. Uber Eats is a bit weird here. So you get 2x Bonvoy for restaurant and grocery deliveries to Residence Inn, Town Place Suites, and Element Hotels. Otherwise, it's 1x back, and it does have to be $40 or more for either one. It does depend on you, but I think I'd rather take Delta miles over Bonvoy points right now, given the meta. Especially if you have Delta cards, then the floor value is pretty solid. So you're going to get $50 for every 5,000 miles as a baseline. That means that 10,000 miles is $100 and so on. In that case, the minimum value is 1 cent per mile. In contrast, Marriott is almost a black box. My target for Marriott Bonvoy is about 0.8 to 0.9 cents per point. Aspirational can range quite a bit from 0.6 all the way up to 1.5, and city ones also range, let's say 0.4 to 0.8 to maybe 1. That's not to say that there aren't good use cases for Bonvoy, but it varies a lot more. It pretty much only makes sense around sporting events, or maybe a festival or concert, or purely aspirational, and in that case you need a ton of points. So for example, the Ritz-Carlton Maldives might run you $1,800 per night, and Sheraton might run you $342. With points, it's $150K for Ritz and $52K for Sheraton. Doing the math there, $1,800 divided by $150K is 1.2 cents per point, and for the Sheraton, it's only 0.66 cents per point, meaning that it makes sense on the top end, but not really on the more affordable ones. That pretty much means that value is only around either situational ones with events or the top end. I think it does depend on how you spend with Uber and how you value the points or miles. Okay, given this, let's look at the low, medium, and high range for both Delta and Bonvoy, and feel free to adjust your numbers as necessary, but these are kind of my ranges. It does depend on category, but for some of them, there's obvious winners. So for example, for Uber Reserve rides, I'd say that Delta wins pretty hands down. Even on the low end, you're getting 3% back in value compared to the top end of Bonvoy, which would be 2.4%. For premium rides, it's a bit more of a toss-up, but on the low end, I'd argue Delta wins, and on the medium and high, I'd say Bonvoy. Heading over to Uber Eats, unless you're ordering to one of their hotels, I'd probably just do Delta because value there seems better. I probably ended up overanalyzing this like I normally do, but I was curious myself anyways. This channel is pretty much me sharing the rabbit holes I end up going down. Reminder that you do need to link your accounts for this to work, but pretty straightforward there. I know people are getting worried about leaks and linking stuff, but compared to health companies like Blue Shield, this info seems a lot more minimal. The sad thing is that even though I'm pretty careful myself, sometimes it's out of my control, and that's why I'm excited to partner with today's sponsor, Delete Me. Data breaches and identity theft is the norm nowadays. Even if you're good about it, it might be on the vendor's end. Even worse, sometimes the data brokers get hacked themselves. Do me a super fast favor. Search for your first name, last name, and email address, or first name, last name, and phone number. A lot of sites share that stuff along with your address, birth date, and even your relatives. This can be a huge risk for identity theft and also home invasions and burglaries. There are ways to remove this stuff yourself, but it can take hours. Delete Me makes it super easy, and I've been using them for more than a year. In that time, they've reviewed over 50,000 listings, doing all the work in the background, and have gotten stuff removed without me lifting a finger. Maybe I'm alone here, but I'd rather not have my home address online. On average, Delete Me removes over 2,000 pieces of data in your first 2 years using them. If you want to join me and protect your personal information, then check out joindeleteme.com/asksebi and use promo code SEBI for 20% off their US consumer plans. Moving into a lightning round, Bilt adds a new redemption option for student loans. The value is a bit weak at 1 cent per point. I'd rather still do travel or transfer to partners, but I guess having more options never hurts. Yeah, I still feel like the upside is with transfers. Speaking of which, Citi did send an email about changes to one of their partners. The title sounded a lot scarier than it was. Main idea is that they're lowering thank you point transfers to Emirates. Before, and I guess technically right now, it's still 1-to-1, but starting July 27th, it'll be 1-to-0.8. You can still redeem at the current redemption rates for now, but after that, it's going to be the new rates. The main draw of Emirates is to book their first class or business class products. You did used to have more options with things like Alaska, but that hasn't really been the case since 2021. But yeah, Emirates is one of the best products out there, both hard and soft products, and their miles are the main way to do it. The fees can be pretty aggressive depending on routing, so for example, going to Dubai, where it's $840 in fees along with a ton of points. Your best bet is generally going to Europe, so here business is 87k points and $106 in fees. I did do a deeper dive in the last video, so it might be worth checking out if you're curious. A bit of a fun one, but kind of also curious where people's heads are. So how much money would you need to volunteer to get bumped? There's a pretty interesting story over on Reddit about someone who got $3,000, which seems pretty good in my book. Also note that this didn't have to be Delta credit. It could be credit for the choice portal, where you could pick Amazon, Airbnb, or other options like Visa gift cards, but for that one there were fees. They got $3,000 and other people that volunteered at the gate got $1,700. For better or worse, I actually haven't been selected or bumped yet, but I have tried to volunteer a few times. Every time it's been a check-in though, and I kind of keep pressing the button to hit the maximum, and a lot of the times it's either 800 or 1,000, and I've never been selected. Yeah, kind of curious what your experience is and what your number is. If Japan's on your list, then you have even more options now. JetBlue is adding JAL as a partner of Japan Airlines, and pricing doesn't look too bad, at least from the West Coast, where it should be about 64k points per way. East Coast is still TBD, but we'll see where it lands. I guess the caveat as of filming is that JAL from the West Coast is still the old product, which isn't the most interesting, but yeah, again, more options are better than less. For the last story, we have American Express and their earnings. Numbers are looking pretty good. This is despite uncertainty in the market and prices of goods increasing. So for now, they're maintaining their full year guidance for revenue growth and also profit. A big reason for this is that the clientele is still spending despite volatility and uncertainty. In the short term at least, it makes sense. For a lot of items like Birkin bags, the demand is still there even if the price increases. So I didn't really know too much about this until recently, but in order to be even offered the chance to buy one of these, there's kind of a quota and minimum spend. If you want a 10 or 12k bag, you need to spend 10 or 12k on other products. Oftentimes they want you to spend on Birkin bait, so things that otherwise wouldn't really sell that people don't really want. On the top end, that interest is still there. I do think there will be more concerns if the market pulls back a bit more, but right now it's still pretty steady. So if you only look at the 6 months, then it looks pretty bad, down almost 8%, but if you zoom out to, let's say, the 5-year, it's still pretty strong. Bumps are part of it, and the trend is still upwards. For now at least, Amex customers are acting like Amex customers. They're not seeing anything different or anything worrisome. To be fair, Amex is a bit different than some other banks. A lot of the other ones make most of their money from credit cards, from interest. If we dive into American Express's annual reports, then the numbers don't really show the same thing. They do still make money from interest, in this case almost $24 billion, but there's a lot of other income numbers. The largest one of which is $35 billion for discount revenue, which is swipe fees. They also make about $8.5 billion from annual fees, and then $5 billion from service fees and other revenue. In total, their non-interest revenue is $50 billion, which is twice their interest income. Factor in that for a lot of their top cards and their top customers, they're not keeping a balance month to month, they're using their card and then paying it off in full every month because that's what they're used to. They don't keep a balance, so there's no interest. Also consider that for some of their other cards, like the Gold card, it used to offer 4x on dining with no cap, with no limitation. In the last update, they added a $50K cap per calendar year, and they probably did it for a reason. They probably had a bunch of people that spent a ton of money eating out, and it caused Amex to lose money. Or I guess more than they would want on dining. So right now, Amex customers aren't changing their spending habits, but we are still in the early innings of things. An 8% pullback is different from a 20% one, which is different from a 30% one. Earnings per share is up and exceeding expectations, and they only had to set aside $1.2 billion to cover loans that they deem uncollectible. It's still a lot, but less than expected, which is a good thing. The only thing that surprises me is the demo that's driving this. People that are older that have a big nest egg are obviously fine, but apparently the driving factor is the younger cohort, so Gen Z and millennials. In the past, the Platinum and Gold cards were targeted towards an older audience, quote unquote the gray-haired upper class. It made sense since back then it wasn't a coupon book, you were paying $4.50 and pretty much paying that to get into lounges. With the credits, younger people in big cities who already pay for Equinox, who already Uber, can now justify the cards. That's not to say that these people don't make money. Depending on industries, some of the salaries can be pretty extreme. It's obviously not everyone, but there are a lot of people that move to the Bay Area after they graduate to go to tech jobs. Same thing with New York, where you do have a bit more variance, with finance driving the numbers up quite a bit more, but their target demo is still pretty strong here. Of the 3.4 million new cardholders they added in the quarter, 60% were millennials and Gen Z, so most of them. One of the big drivers for this is that apparently Gen Z and millennials really like to eat out. That's also why Amex acquired Resi and Talk, and why the Gold card is the de facto food card right now. I would hazard to bet that for most people, it's less of a flex and more of a math equation. That's why I suggest people run numbers for the Platinum card, and same thing for the Gold card. Yes, there are credits, and they can be annoying, but even if you can use 2 of the 4, you're probably in a good spot. So for example, I don't really value the Dunkin' credit because I can't really use it. I might be loading it up, but yeah, I don't count it. For a lot of people, if you spend enough on food, whether eating out or groceries, then the credits might matter a lot less than you think. Run the numbers and see where they fall. On that note, if you want to learn about cards and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksebi.com, and also down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive, but otherwise, it is a huge way to support the channel, so thank you in advance. Also, thanks again to Delete Me for sponsoring today's video. If you made it to this point, leave a donut emoji for Duncan in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and also respond. 3 questions. Number 1, do you value Delta Sky miles more or Bonvoy points? Number 2, have you had any identity theft scares? And number 3, what are your thoughts on Amex's earnings? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, hit the like button, subscribe, but otherwise hope you liked it. See you next time. Also, side note, but the Rockets crowd is a lot stronger than the Warriors crowd in terms of energy and vibe. Toyota Center's production is top notch. See ya.